Hello, welcome to Run Testers. My name's Nick, and this is our first run review of the Nike ReactX Infinity Run 4. So the Infinity Run 4 is the first major redesign of the Infinity line since it launched a few years back. It's still a shoe that's designed for a similar purpose though, which is to be a stable, neutral shoe with lots of cushioning, designed for easy runs, and to also be a very good option for newer runners just starting out in the sport who want a lot of cushioning. It's $160 in the US, which is the same price as the previous model, but in the UK, we seem to have had a little bit of a price jump. It's now £155. It's also had a big weight jump. It's now 345 grams or 12.2 ounces in my UK size 9, which is a US 10. This model has been getting heavier with every generation, but this is still a very big jump from the Infinity Run 3, which was 310 grams in my size. So we've got a 9mm drop, and the stack height is 39mm at the heel and 30mm at the forefoot. You've got a Flyknit upper again with loads of padding around the collar and on the tongue there. The big plastic heel clip that you saw on the Infinity line in the past is gone, but there is still a small internal heel counter. And the shoe has a couple of other methods of making sure it's nice and stable. You've got big sidewalls of foam on the midsole that your foot sits within, and then a very wide base, even wider, especially around the midfoot, than the previous model, which did taper a bit in the center of the shoe, but you don't get that so much with the Infinity Run 4. Nike also says that the fit is going to be wider than the previous shoe, especially in the toes, and it's added a water repellent liner to the front of the toe box to keep some water off your feet on wet runs. But obviously the biggest change to the shoe is the new ReactX midsole, which Nike says has got a much lower carbon footprint than React foam, and also delivers more energy return. An extra 13% of energy return, in fact, compared to standard React foam. It's certainly softer and squishier to the touch than React foam. You've still got a rocker design as with the previous models of the shoe, and then you've got a new waffle tread outsole, which you'll see in some of Nike's other shoes, as opposed to the blotchy style of outsole we had on the Infinity line in the past. It's a full outsole, so it should be really good for durability. Obviously adds a little bit of weight to the shoe to have a fairly thick full layer outsole like this, but the benefits of it will be felt in terms of grip and durability, like I say.
Hi, I'm Jane, one of the run testers, and it is my first run with the Nike React Infinity Run 4. This arrived this morning and I've taken it out on a kind of really gentle, easy run, just to kind of give it a test. So here are my thoughts so far. Start with the fit. I would say these come up a little bit snug. These are a US 7.5, UK 5, which is my normal size in Nike running shoes, and they do feel they are pretty, just a little bit snug. So I think if you're between sizes, maybe size up in these. The Nike say they've updated the upper. They say it's water resistant on the inside, so if you run through a puddle, your feet aren't going to get soaked, and they say their best Flyknit yet. It definitely does feel, I feel like we've moved away from like the kind of light knit where you can almost see your socks through the shoe, to definitely more of a kind of tighter, thicker upper again. But you know, they fit fine, they fit comfortably. There's a lot of padding around the collar and the tongue, and I think they look really cool. I like what they've done with the design. I think they've definitely changed it from the last few versions. You've still got this quite pronounced rocker, but just it looks different, and you've still got the React foam, but I do think they look really cool out of the box.
So on the fit of the shoe, Nike recommends going half a size up on some materials I have, which I wouldn't recommend. I would go true to size. This is my normal size for Nike across the board, a UK 9, a US 10, and if anything, I've got a little bit too much room. I can certainly notice the extra room in the toe box, and it feels roomier around the midfoot too compared to the Infinity Run 3, which fit me really well in my normal size. I have quite a narrow foot, so that's probably where the differences are rising. Like, I've got a bit more room because of my narrow foot. And if you have a wide foot, I'm sure you'll get on better with the Infinity Run 4 compared to past models, because it does have a lot of extra width in the toe box, which doesn't taper quite so aggressively as the Infinity Run 3. Overall though, I've been pretty happy true to size. The hold has been good around the midfoot and heel on my run so far. I could potentially go half size down just because I've got that extra room in the toe box, but I don't feel the need to. So yeah, I'll stick with your normal size for running shoes and Nike shoes. So, first run review. I've actually done 3 runs in the shoe, although 2 of them very short, don't really count. I did a quick 20-minute run on the treadmill with it earlier to test out a new feature on Peloton's treadmill. And then I did my run for the day, which was an easy 5 miles in the centre of town before coming back and doing a little pootle around the block, wearing both the Infinity Run 4 and 3 to see how they compared. Now, on paper, I was not very excited about the shoe. It is really heavy. That's one of the heaviest weights I've seen for my size, apart from maybe the Ultra Boost 22 or something like that for the last few years. So this new foam was really going to have to pack a lot of bounce, I think, to try and create a nice feeling on the run. And so far, I'm not really sold on it. Like, it's certainly noticeably squishier and softer than the foam on the Infinity Run 3 and past models. Get a little bit of bounce back, but you're not getting a lot of bounce back. It feels more almost that you're sinking in and then getting lost a little bit in that foam upon landing. It's an okay sensation, but it certainly feels quite bottom heavy as a shoe to me, and I don't really think you're getting a lot of pop back from it if you're going to try and up the pace at all. Like on the treadmill, I was able to do some sprints and stuff like that, and I did speed up a little bit on some stages of my run, but overall it's very much a shoe that's going to be designed for easy plods, cruising along, just enjoying the benefit of all the cushioning at the heel in particular. It does feel less cushioned under the forefoot, and I think on stats alone it's as cushioned as the Infinity Run and the drop is the same, but it feels like a higher drop almost, and it really feels like the cushioning runs out quick at the front of the shoe. And I think over long runs, if you are a heel striker like myself coming through onto that forefoot, you might get a little bit of forefoot fatigue from the shoe, but didn't really get that today on short runs. It certainly felt very cushioned at the heel and midfoot with that big stack of ReactX foam. But when running with both shoes side by side, it's noticeable how much I prefer the fit of the Infinity Run 3. That's probably because I do have a narrow foot. It really does hold my foot really nicely. I think it's one of the most pleasant upper experiences I've had from any shoe, the Infinity Run 3. And then when you're on the run, the older shoe feels a bit firmer, but you really notice the rocker a bit more from it. I think you can actually get into a nice rhythm with the Infinity Run 3, whereas you do sink in a little bit more with the Infinity Run 4, and that negates the rocker effect, I think, a little bit. Whereas with the Infinity Run 3, you're really not getting much from the foam in terms of energy return and explosive feeling, but I do feel like I can get into a nice sync with the rocker, and actually that means it works at a nice range of paces sometimes, because you are almost just skipping along the ground. The foam's not giving you a lot, but the shoe's geometry works really well, whereas I don't think the foam and the geometry of the Infinity Run 4 have really worked together so well for me yet. Like, it just feels like I'm sinking in a bit, losing a bit of the rocker, and then not getting a huge amount from the foam. So yeah, it wasn't the greatest first run. It's probably the upshot of all of that, but plenty more testing to come. It certainly feels like it's going to be a nice cushioned shoe, and it doesn't seem to have lost anything in terms of stability, but I'm not sure the new foam really adds a lot to the overall experience yet.
So the run test, as I said, I wore this for a really easy run, and I kind of think that's what this shoe was designed for. It's definitely a heavier shoe. I've weighed it at 260 grams. So, you know, it is heavier. It's heavier than the Invincible. It's heavier than the Peg. Underfoot, it feels a bit like the Ultra Boost, the Ultra Boost 23. It's not the same Boost foam, but the React is definitely that like firmer foam, but it's not a lightweight shoe. So I think it's it's definitely an everyday shoe, but personally, if I'm going out for an everyday run, a really easy mileage run, I want something like the Invincible that's super plush, or the Asics Gel Nimbus 25. Do you know what I mean? I want that like sink in comfort, which you don't get in this shoe. That said, you know, it's still the same Infinity we've seen for the last few years, and if you're a fan of that shoe, you're a fan of the React foam, you'll like it. I like the feel of it. I don't know, for the money, I don't know where this would sit in your collection. So my early verdict, I'll obviously be doing a lot more running in this shoe. I want to test it for different stuff. You know, yes, it's kind of an everyday shoe, but I want to test it on the treadmill. I want to test it for kind of trying to run a bit faster in it. But my first kind of impressions are, I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it. I wasn't blown away by it. And I think for $160 or £154, there are kind of other everyday running shoes on the market that are probably a similar price point and a bit more exciting. That said, I feel like I did with the Ultra Boost Light, where I'm like, this just might not be my shoe. And actually, there is a place in the market for this shoe. There is a runner that would love this shoe, and I'm looking forward to doing some more testing and some more miles in it. I'd say if you love the Infinity Run 3, you'll like this. It does feel different. I think it looks a lot different. I think it looks amazing. So I think if you're a fan of the Infinity line, it's still got everything you'd love about it. It's still got the kind of rocker, still got the React foam, still got the Flyknit upper, just in a kind of cooler looking package. So it's still the Infinity we know and love, and I'm going to be definitely doing more testing in it.
Yeah, we're not saying anything too decisive about the shoe at this stage because it's just our first run review, but I don't feel like the changes to the Infinity Run 4 have made it a better running shoe as yet. Like, the new foam is there, it's good, it's got a lower carbon footprint obviously, but at the same time I'm not really sure you're seeing the benefits of that extra energy return. It feels that softness, the squishiness that they've added with this foam means that it loses a little bit of the smooth transition that I used to get from the Infinity Run 3 with its firmer, not particularly exciting React foam, but it did a job, lasted a long time. I'm sure this will still be a nice long lasting shoe, but I'm not sure the ride really benefited from the changes made because the weight gain is obviously substantial, and I'm not sure the new foam really does enough to counteract that. But it will be a comfortable option, I think, for newer runners in particular, with a load of heel cushioning to give that protective feeling and be a bit more comfortable on your early runs in the sport. It's still a pretty good looking shoe. I mean, I think I probably slightly prefer the look of the Infinity Run 3, but it's a shoe that's designed to have a bit of crossover purpose, and I think it will still have that. But so far, the changes haven't really wowed me or necessarily improved the shoe for my money. And the other thing to quickly talk about, though obviously we'll dive into this much more in our full review, is where the Infinity stands in Nike's range. Like, there are quite a lot of cushion shoes in Nike's range now. Like, the Invincible is not to everyone's taste, but it is, a shoe with an identity, a very soft, very squidgy shoe with all that ZoomX foam in the midsole. Has a bit more bounce, a lot more bounce than this ReactX foam for sure. So that's one option. Then the Pegasus 40 is a lot cheaper than the Infinity, and I think just a far better ride. It's still cushioned and comfortable, maybe not as cushioned as the Infinity, but still does that job, and it has a much better transition onto your toes and more versatility for a nice variety of runs. So, there are two shoes that have a stronger identity, I think, than this new Infinity, which just doesn't feel too much like the old one and doesn't necessarily feel a lot better. Like I say, more to say on those comparisons down the line.